Good evening. We're going to go ahead and get started. I first want to thank everyone for being here tonight. Thank you for making the sacrifice to come to the conference. Thank you to our medical professionals, our sponsors, our families. And tonight is special because tonight is a tribute to someone. I'm going to cry. I'll go ahead and say it. It's going to happen. I tried to desensitize. It's not working. Okay, so let me start with, I'm just going to read. I think that may be better. Okay. My name is Teresa Warner. I am the president of the board for NUCDF. It's good to see some familiar faces. It's also wonderful to see new faces. And thank you for everyone for being here tonight. Tonight, we honor our friend, our angel, and our hero. Cindy Le Mons, our longtime NUCDF executive director, was my dear friend. I'm sorry, Eva, I'm trying. Cindy was, okay, I got it, I'm good. Cindy was the grounding force, the center of our knowledge, and the bedrock of our UCD world. Over the 20 years she served as NUCDF's leader, and as many of you know, Cindy was a force to be reckoned with. Do we agree? If you knew Cindy, you knew that. Cindy was a phenomenal leader. She had the passion for helping our most vulnerable families. It was part of her soul. It was who she was. For 3 generations, Cindy's family has been affected by urea cycle disorders. That personal connection gave Cindy a deep understanding of the issues and concerns that face UCD families, both day-to-day and long-term. Cindy passed away June 21st, 2020, surrounded by her loving family. Cindy's sister Eva is here with us tonight. Cindy's nieces, Kimberly and Jessica, are also with us. Cindy's mom and Cindy's beloved Matthew are at home in California. Are they watching this live? Are we recording this for them? Okay. We want to thank you for coming. We know this is very, very difficult, but we wanted you to know how much we loved her. Tonight, the host of our event is Dr. Brendan Lee from the Baylor College of Medicine. He and Cindy were quite a pair, quite a pair. I wish that every person had the professional relationship that they had. There was nothing that they couldn't talk about. There was no problem that they couldn't solve. They always had each other's backs. So when we knew we were going to do this tonight, it was fitting that we asked Dr. Lee, and he said, of course, I would love nothing more than to make a tribute to Cindy. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Lee.
Okay, hi everybody. I haven't had a chance to come to NUCDF in the recent years, but my heart has always been here with Cindy, and I think in a way, what NUCDF has become and all the things that she has done is a reflection of the growth and the strong and immutable foundation that she's built. You know, Cindy and I kind of view us as growing up together. As you know, she joined, I think, the board in 1995, is that correct? And I started my genetics fellowship at Baylor in 1995. And she became president or co-president in the late 90s, 99. I started my lab in 98. And I met her at that time. And it's interesting. I was this new faculty member trying to enter the world of urea cycle disorders research. And one of the first meetings I went to was, in fact, the very first NUCDF-sponsored consensus conference. And Cindy was there organizing this, 98, I think, around. And I'm thinking, why am I even invited? And there was, other leaders of the field, people you well know, like Mark Batshaw and Mark Utkoff, and Marshall Summers was there, and Steve Cederbaum, really key individuals. And what was so evident to me was that Cindy, by force of her personality, was not going to deal with any nonsense. Everybody had to work together and behave, and that very much is the foundation of what I think has been delivered over 20 years. And I still think of, those early days. I think it's clear that, she was an inspiration to all of us, and especially me. I think that, all of us work and do science because of our patients, but you always have inspiration from different areas. And I think Cindy was absolutely one of my inspirers. And I'll touch on that. And part of the reason is because, she was so impassioned about urea cycle disorders and the experiences of her own family, of all the families that she engaged. But at the heart, she was a scientist. She was an amazing observational scientist. And her intuition and observations led us in all the right directions. And so in a way, she really was a muse to the scientific community that she then galvanized. The force that she was in bringing families together and bringing scientists and providers together is evidenced around us every day. When we started, it was that small room of investigators, and now you think of, and you'll hear from them in the coming days, the larger community, the next generation of scientists, what has been done in the Urea Cycle Disorders Consortium, as you'll hear about, is again all because of the force of her nature and personality. She was the driving force of the NUCDF mission. Obviously, patient support was top of the list, and I think all of you know that no matter what time of day, year, she was always available on the phone. And and I would say that, and thinking, she always liked the phone, even when Zoom became available. I don't think I've ever, in the Zoom times, I'm not sure I ever saw her on a Zoom, but it was really always on the phone. And I think all of you have been touched by her engagement and her support. I think all the families here. So if you've talked to Cindy on the phone where she gave you advice, why don't you stand up? I think most of us, professionals, families, thank you. So, I think that then really drove her to not just, and this is, I think, very important, back in those days in the 90s, the main mission of NUCDF was supporting each other and families, and many organizations start that way, but she understood and saw that educating the community, not just families, but providers, and also fully embracing research, because that's how you ultimately get treatments and cures, was so important. And I think there are many, many organizations that saw her and took her lead, and saw her lead in really achieving so much. I would argue that, in the past 30 years, from really driven by her and NUCDF, more advances were made in, inborn errors and biochemical disorders in urea cycle than probably most others. And I think that her example is now galvanizing a whole field to do the same. It really is unbelievable. I think that in thinking about education, she obviously, again, saw the power and the importance of that, and bringing awareness to UCD treatment and diagnoses. She led initiatives like the Check Ammonia Awareness Campaign, and all of you know how she hates to be photographed. Well, she even appeared in a video for that. So therefore, you know how important that second mission of educating the world is. She led and supported the development of patient stories like Zoe's story, a video about a beautiful, spirited 19-year-old girl who lost her life because of undiagnosed UCD. And I think her mission was to make sure no patient should ever experience that tragedy because of a misdiagnosis. And I would say, that kind of story was commonplace. Delayed diagnoses, early today, we heard the stories of the two Nates, and the contrast there in terms of what happened, or what was really the standard 2 decades ago versus now, today. And that, again, is very much her legacy. And that, of course, is the importance of early diagnosis at newborn screening stage. She worked tirelessly to try to get UCDs on newborn screens, and then more broadly, just newborn screening in general in the US. And of course, again, that's now just standard of care. It's something we deal with, and so many patients are diagnosed before, hopefully, they become even mildly symptomatic. How many families are here who've been diagnosed by newborn screening? Stand up. Well, amazing. I mean, you think about this, that's amazing. 20 years ago, of course, that wasn't even a question. Please sit down. And I think you think about the impact of that. Again, she was at the forefront of driving that forward. I think that educating, our legislators, our families, our community, our policymakers was critical, but she always had the eye on the ball, which was she appreciated the importance of sustainability, and that was about the sustainability of NUCDF, the sustainability of the families, the sustainability of the providers and the scientists. And this is why she embraced me as a young faculty member, because she, again, really understood that to really make a difference, we all need to do our part. And part of that is succession planning. Who are the next generation who will take your place? And I think that was why things like the NUCDF Fellowship, or the fellowships provided by the UCDC as part of that, has been so amazing. I think there are so many, leading scientists today, many of whom are in the UCDC, were supported by the NUCDF directly with a fellowship, indirectly in terms of their research protocols and engagement in so many ways. If you were a trainee or a fellow who are now senior or established that was supported, please stand up. Folks like Andrea Gropman and Sanders Nagamani and Lindsay Burridge, and just tons of, folks that really have been touched on, and who are now leaders in this community. I think, as I said, she was my scientific muse, and she was that for the field. She really identified the problems that we needed to tackle. And because they basically came from the essence of her observation and interaction with all of you, the families, that informed her, and she became sort of, the nexus in which we became personally sort of empowered and informed in what to do. Whether this was, issues around neurocognitive outcome, issues around how to develop treatments, what are the best treatments, what to pursue, not to pursue, natural history, what things occur as UCD patients age. This is an increasingly important element, because now with newborn screening and all the treatments that have been developed the past 20 years, there's still no cure, so you're still living with the disease, obviously, and understanding that, and this is such an important part of what the Urea Cycle Disorders Consortium has done. And let me spend a few minutes on the UCDC. This, I think, is at some level the crowning achievement. The UCDC was built on the fact that she was able to bring key leaders together. In the field of science and medicine, there's a lot of competition. That's just the nature of things. But, I think, again, by the force of her personality and her ability to get folks together, like that consensus conference, the UCDC, which is, of course, this consortium that has worked together with all of you for the past now 20 years, has been an unbelievable mechanism for discovery and facilitating and catalyzing development of treatments like Ravicti and many more coming down the pipeline. And that in itself translated to over $20 million of funding. And again, there are lots of rare diseases. I know, I work in many rare diseases. But the ability of this community to be there from day one and to sustain that excellence and to really think about it. There are only about 20 consortia at a time, and the UCDC has been there on day one and continues till today. And so again, Cindy was a co-principal investigator and the driver of much of what went on, if not all, at many levels. And so, I think when you look back, and I was just saying this to the over 40 investigators that met earlier today in the UCDC, and I think about what, 20 plus years ago when Mark Batchar, and all of us started that and the consortium, the number of people trained, now Andrea and Sandish and others lead this consortium, the treatments that have been developed, and the many more that are coming down the pipeline is really, again, her legacy. There is no question in my mind. I think if you deleted any of us, the scientists, any single one of us, I think most of that work still would have continued, including me, Mark Batchor, all of us. I think if you deleted Cindy, I'm not so sure this would have continued, because she was very much the glue that pulled it together. Her focus, even in research, came back to patients. And, the NUCDF, again, as a model, and now many organizations do this, but engaged and focused on patient-oriented research, a mechanism called PCORI. And NUCDF got one of those grants to really be the driver, patient-driven research in looking at things like liver transplantation versus medical management, a very important question that all of you face. And so, if you're in the room and have had a liver transplant, well, again, you were informed by studies like that Cindy ultimately drove. Who's benefited from a liver transplant here? You can stand up. All right. So I think, bottom line, she really paved the way and established an unbelievable foundation. And this is important because there's a lot of work that is left undone. I look back at the amazing things and the mechanisms of understanding UCD, diagnosing UCDs earlier and quicker, educating providers and families to recognize and test for ammonia levels, developing drugs that actually work better at controlling ammonia, but there are no cures yet. And so again, what she has done is set a foundation for the next decade, hopefully, to now start developing cures. And I think there's all this exciting work on, gene therapy of different types. And certainly those are exciting. And I think she'll tell you that because she's been involved in every way, the key will be assessing each of them on their own merits individually. And she will always, and I think the leadership now of NUCDF will certainly, advise the families appropriately in guiding them through how do you partner with, scientists and companies in the right way to get to treatment. And then I would also, say that the foundation she's laid is for NUCDF. She was a singular force. I think we all know that. And now that she's not with us, her legacy lives on, but now we'll take a team. And I think there's no better individual than Teresa Warner to lead that team. I think that, I met Teresa with Cindy many, many years ago, and so many years I don't want to count. And I think that she really, is the right person with her team to lead all of you and the investigators into this next decade of hopefully great discovery. I would say that, what I miss most about Cindy is, in addition to all the inspiration, is that we always would have and sneak a dinner, whether it was an NUCDF meeting or a city that we were, just happened to be together at the same time. And I was always amazed, not just by her ideas, but I was amazed that she probably had a unique metabolism. And Eva and I were just talking about that. She's the only person, maybe Eva's appropriately the only other person, that carries a gene mutation that sustains her with red wine and cheese. You don't actually need anything else. And preferably burrata, as I remember. So I mean, that's pretty good if we could clone that gene. And I really do miss those dinners. While I was eating and I'm just observing that she's just drinking wine and eating cheese. So I think with that, all the achievements that she's had, I think we can only be celebrating and thankful that we've had this time with her. So it's not a time for sadness. It's time to celebrate all that she's done. So let's give her a round of applause. So we're lucky to have, in addition, a few families who would like to say a few words about Cindy. And so I'll introduce Christy McCracken. Christy, you want to come up and say a few words about Cindy?
All right, I'm going to not try to look at everybody because then I'll be crying. So to know Cindy was to love Cindy. I first met Cindy, I don't even remember the year because I only remember NUCDF and Cindy. They were one. I think as I got older, we got closer, which seems odd. During a few years ago, during a pregnancy, she was like my hero. She got my genetic testing done, and it was then done in Baylor. Somehow it got on the geneticist's desk the next day. It's supposed to take like weeks, I think, when they test the embryo, correct? Yeah. So she was like, by the way, just tell them to break in and get it. She wanted me to break into the genetics office to get the results to see if my baby was affected, which he was. And we talked throughout the whole thing. And after that part passed, I think we got closer. She inspired me to be the advocate that I am. I really wish she was here. I really wish I got to give her a hug. That was my favorite part of coming to conference, is always seeing her. It's very strange not to see her here, and that's a little emotional. And I just wish that she would have got to meet my daughter, because she was so happy. She was one of the first people I called when I got the call. She knew before anybody knew, only my mom and my husband, and she knew. And she knew how I went through to get that child. I wish she was here to see her.
Thank you. And Michelle Denon, is Michelle here? Oh, there she is.
Well, my tendency to procrastinate got me on the stage tonight because I was trying to write a tribute for Cindy, and it was really hard to do, so I missed the deadline. When I did send it in, Teresa said, well, would you want to share it in person? So I am going to read a little bit just to prevent myself from getting emotional. Our daughter, Sophia, was born in December 2008 and diagnosed with ASA at 5 days old. After 6 months of feeling completely alone on this journey, we traveled to California for our first NUCDF Family Conference. For the families that are here for the first time or with young, newly diagnosed kids, babies, I remember being in your shoes. I remember pulling up to the office in Pasadena, and we sat in the car and watched people walk in. And I started crying, and I said to my husband, those people, they're normal people. Those people walking in are normal. And he said, "What did you think they were going to look like?" After 6 months of just feeling like nobody could truly understand what we were going through and the life that we were living and the path that we were walking, it was just so relieving to breathe out and just see that we had all of these families around us going through the same thing. And that's where we were blessed to meet Cindy. She quickly became our partner, our supporter, and our friend. Over the years, she spent countless hours on the phone with me. Sometimes it was to talk through treatment options in layman's terms after a medical appointment. I won't throw Dr. Berry under the bus there. She didn't need to translate for him. He did a pretty good job already. Other times, she'd calm my nerves during a particularly challenging hospitalization. When we began considering liver transplant for Sophia, she spent countless hours on the phone listening to me go through the pros and cons, then go through the pros and cons again, then go through the pros and then go through the cons again. Whatever we needed, she was there. Cindy was truly the unsung hero of the UCD community. She was humble and did not want attention or accolades. She just wanted our kids to have the best chance possible. We'll honor her memory by wrapping our arms around every new family that steps into this life. Her legacy will live on through all of the families here and each one of our children who are living a better life because of Cindy Le Mons. Thank you.
So I think, if Cindy were here and she's looking down on us, I could imagine her saying, just cut through all the bleep and just do it. So that's the direction to all the families and providers and scientists. And I think that's something we'll take forward. At the same time, I do think it's important to, for future generations, for the community to just remind folks about her. And, one of the best ways to do that is to memorialize, her passion certainly in science and research. And so one of a big supporters of the NUCDF and a friend of Cindy's and a dynamo in her own right in terms of rare disease is Kathy Roberts. And Kathy could not be here with us today. She is the mother of a child, Jenny Ball, who has an undiagnosed disease, and of which impacts the urea cycle, but secondarily, so it doesn't have a primary urea cycle disorder. But that's how she got to know Cindy and came to several of the meetings, and I think she admires Cindy enormously, because I think they are cut from the same cloth at some level. So she and the foundation that she established, the American Institute of Neurointegrative Development, endowed and donated $150,000 to endow a lecture in perpetuity in Cindy's honor. And it is the Cindy Le Mons Memorial Lecture in Metabolism, which is, of course, what we all focus on with urea cycle and all the other biochemical disorders. And so this is wonderful because this will go on forever, for as long as, future generations will work in research in metabolism and UCDs. And the NUCDF and we at Baylor College of Medicine will actually co-host this lecture around the country. We'll find local institutions and support a speaker that would be invited to different institutions, and it will be on important topics in metabolism. Obviously focused on research, but I could imagine it tackling many other areas that may be important, such as advocacy or other issues, passionate or education. So I think that this will be really an apt remembrance and reminder of all that she's done, and I'm sure every time we come together, we'll teach new generations, since obviously she's not here, but of what her impact has been. So we're very delighted that Kathy and her organization made this very generous gift to really in her memory. So we're very delighted, and she couldn't be with us here today, but let's give them a round of applause for this. Okay, with that, I am going to turn it back to Teresa. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Dr. Lee. This is what the lecture series, this is the branding for it. And I think it's safe for me to say, Sandish, is it safe, and Lindsay? I believe that our first speaker for the speaker series will be Dr. Brendan Lee. Yes. Supporting young and upcoming researchers was near and dear to Cindy. For many years, NUCDF has awarded fellowship grants to ensure the future of UCD research. Tonight, we have a special tribute from Dr. Sandish Naganami and Dr. Lindsay Burridge. They're past recipients of this fellowship grant. Dr. Naganami and Dr. Burridge have exceeded Cindy's expectations in their dedication to UCD research and in UCDF. They were very smart to record this ahead of time so they would not do what I did. So,
I was fortunate to know Cindy, work with her, and call her a friend for over 15 years. Cindy was a leader in the field of urea cycle disorders, and she wore many hats. First and foremost, she was a passionate advocate for individuals with UCDs and their families. Families will tell you stories of how she was up all night with them when their loved one was in the hospital and how she contacted the right people to help optimize their care. We in the field knew her as a leader who had pivotal roles in advancing research and developing therapies for urea cycle disorders, many of which have now become standard of care. We knew her as a cheerleader who championed the careers of many young investigators, some of who have become leaders in the field. We knew her as a prominent voice that nudged our research to become more patient-centric and then even more patient-centric. We hope to honor her legacy by continuing to work by the principles we learned from her.
Cindy was a colleague, a mentor, and a friend. She was integral at connecting the UCD community, whether it be patients and families, physicians, researchers, or other healthcare providers. She was smart and intuitive, and I learned from every single conversation that I had with her. Cindy's perseverance, her curiosity, and her intellect are an inspiration for all of us. And certainly her legacy will live on in all of the work that we do to accelerate research for UCDs, to educate the community about UCDs, and to improve the lives of individuals with these disorders.
I asked families about a year ago if they would like to send a tribute to Cindy. We took all those tributes, there were more than 100, and we put them in a memory book for Eva. So if Eva, if you'd like to come up with Kimberly and Jessica, we'd like to present you with that. And these are from around the world and all the lives that Cindy touched.
Just give me a moment. There's so much that I want to say to all of you. I practiced really hard not to cry because I can hear her telling me, don't cry. That voice. You were also very important to her. You were an inspiration to her. Your own stories, your tragedies, your losses, your blessings. And I want you to know that. And to her colleagues, I will call you her colleagues. Dr. Lee, Sandish, Lindsay, Andrea, all of you. She praised your work, and she respected you because you respected her and you listened to her. She was an amazing sister. And I all know that you feel her loss, the ones that knew her, but I have to tell you, she was born to do this. She came into the world, and believe it or not, she was my big sister, but we always knew she was special. And as I told Dr. Lee earlier, 31 years ago, we began this journey and discovered that with the birth of Tyler, my son, that he carried this devastating disease. And most of you may know that he survived till he was 6.5. And Cindy's life was thrown into finding a cure for this disease. And I'll never forget it. She was by my side every moment. And again, there is purpose for everyone's life. And I think that was her purpose. And Tyler came into this world to complete that, because she was able to give back so much and help so many other people that maybe that would not have been able to happen otherwise. So as we go through this, I still grieve for her every day. She was, again, an amazing person, intelligent, witty, smart. She was my best friend. Talk to her every day. So I don't know how she found all the time to talk to all of you. Anyway, thank you very, very much for all your thoughts and your prayers. It's much appreciated. And thank you.
Thank you, Eva, Kimberly, and Jessica, for allowing us to honor Cindy as she honored us. She loved us and we loved her. So as a final closing tribute to Cindy, none of this she would like. She would say, move along. But in a final tribute to her, whenever we visited this hotel to decide that this is where we would have the conference, my husband Steve and I were walking along the waterway, and I said, it was at night, and I said, we really need to do something that is just exceptional for Cindy. And he said, why don't we float something in the waterway? And I went, you think they'll approve it? So I came back to the hotel the next day, and I said, we have a crazy idea. We want to float some things in the water, little lanterns. And the hotel said that will never get approved. But you could ask the Woodlands Township if they would approve it. So I requested, got on their docket, spoke at their commission meeting, and they just couldn't say no. They gave me all these reasons, and I had comebacks for them because Cindy taught me well. And everything they said, what about this? Got it covered. What about this? Got it covered. And they came back and said, float your lanterns. Do it. We're all for it. The only issue is we have to make sure that we get the lanterns out. So we have a few dads, Jack and Steve. They're going to help us launch lanterns and get lanterns back out of the water. It is not fully dark outside yet. I think, what did we decide, Dr. Lee, around 8 and 8:30? So we can fellowship. There's still some more food in the back. There's still some more drinks. But about 8:20, what I'd like for us to do is if we could go out the doors, there are lanterns set up. We will turn the lights on the lanterns, walk down the ramp. Steve and Jack will be there. We'll put the lanterns in the water, and we'll say our we love you to Cindy. So if you'll join us for that. We also have some small candles we would like for everyone. Once you launch your lantern, you can line up on the sidewalk, and we can honor her as in a final tribute. And then she'll say, y'all be done with that. And we'll be done with that, and tomorrow will be fantastic in honor of her as well. So thank you all for coming. Thank you all for allowing us to let Cindy and our community know how much we loved her. So I appreciate that. So in about 20 minutes, we'll say that we're going to meet outside. Okay? Thank you.